Now here we get into the EU Pay Transparency Directive, straight up kind of codified in the Sweden's proposed law. And this is almost taken verbatim from the EU Pay Transparency Directive, where these specific metrics that a company has to perform on. If you're familiar with UK or Ireland pay data reporting, this is gonna look very familiar, right? Because these types of metrics are also apparent there as well. So you have to develop a payroll report, which contains 1, wage differences between women and men, 2, wage difference between women and men with regard to salary supplements or variable allowances. And when we talk about that, and this is also related to one of the Q&A that saw pop up, it could include bonus, commissions, overtime pay, severance packages, things like that. So these are, additional, with respect to those bonuses or other allowances, those aside from the base pay, those as well. And then the median wage differences between women and men, median wage differences between women and men with respect to the wage supplements or variable compensation, and then the proportion of women and men who receive salary supplements or variable allowances, and the proportion of women and men in each salary quartile. And when we talk about salary quartile, the way that eventually looks is that you have you talk about your top 25% earners, right? Your 50%, 25 to 50% earners, your 50% to 75% earners, and then your 75 to the lowest quartile of earners. And amongst those quartiles, what proportion of those are men and women? What proportion of those are men and women, each of those quartiles? And you have to submit this payroll report to the Equality Ombudsman, which is the Swedish entity in charge of actually carrying out the EU Pay Transparency Directive implementation and their pay equity reporting in general. And if the information shows a pay difference of 5% or more, the employer must explain how the pay difference can be justified with factual or gender neutral criteria, or how the pay differences must be remedied. Right? Employers with 250 or more employees must submit a payroll report annually, and employers with 100 or more employees must submit a payroll report every 3 years. So this is a joint. So when Maxwell was talking about that joint pay assessment and the EU Pay Transparency Directive, this is it, right? So these 6 metrics, they're kind of what I would call like raw pay gaps, right? There's no sort of nuance in terms of how you're looking at them. It really is just, not really taking into consideration seniority or experience, things like that. But that joint pay assessment is a pay equity analysis. In the sense, it's not a raw pay gap analysis. You actually are looking into factors to see if you can explain why, if you're over 5%, what are some factors, what we call them work influencing factors that can explain that 5%, over 5% pay difference, right? So, and if you're unable to do that, then, and I don't have it in the slide there, but if you're unable to do that and you're unable to remedy that difference within, I think, a 6-month period, you're also required to sort of submit your salary survey in the previous slide, right? So it's definitely a more onerous requirement than just what's in the EU Pay Transparency Directive, right? The whole salary survey we talked about in the previous slide is not really talked about much in the EU Pay Transparency Directive at all, right? It's kind of a nuance in the Swedish law.